What is up, guys? Doing another one down solo. Today I'm doing Scarface Mansion. Did this without assets and without downs. Pretty fun little heist to run. I experimented, was using some various builds, and I didn't really pick what I considered the quote-unquote best one for the job. However, I did just decide to go back with a rogue build. I'm really liking the versatility of all the perk decks that Overkill is adding, and I am a huge proponent of like using various builds and like mixing things up, using different weapons and so on and so forth. I know in a lot of my previous runs, my earlier runs, I mainly stuck to using the Cavity and the Fire Loco and using the Rogue perk deck and things like that. But as I've actually went into the realm of doing these no down runs, and it's opened up the way for a lot of builds, because a lot of skill points have opened themselves up since I'm not putting them all I don't know, 36 skill points into the fugitive tree or something like that. So just experimenting with different builds. I decided to run with the Cavity and the China Puff this time around. Still a DMR grenade launcher combo. Still really fun though. I was going to do another Sicario run for this heist. However, in light of the fact that Sicario, as by many people's point of view, a little bit, I hate saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Some people are saying it's overpowered, and I guess to an extent it might be considered that due to the way its mechanics function. However, it's a lot easier to play smartly with Sicario than with other perk decks, I feel. That might not necessarily be true. However, I feel like it's in a pretty comfortable spot right now. However, some people are of the opinion that it's going to be fixed. I've heard that it's potentially bugged, and that it gives bonuses that it shouldn't be giving in its current state. So at least for the time being, I'm going to try to refrain from using Sicario in any of these runs. I know I did it for my first full bank and for my go bank runs, but that's because the perk deck was brand new. And I was like, oh, I want to play with it, and I want to do runs with it, and all that kind of stuff. So I'll see if I can refrain from using it for any of these runs for a little bit until we see if it gets balanced or changed, or if Overkill makes any sort of statement on it. So regardless, I'm just running a regular rogue perk deck, like I was saying. Nothing fancy going on in terms of loadout. Trying to think if I picked up anything crazy in this build. I don't think I did. No, this build's pretty standard, honestly. I don't have any kind of crazy skills. It's very generic. Low blow, sneaky bastard. First aid kits, clearly. And some various other things. I am packing concussion grenades, to provide myself that little bit of cover. General strategy for this heist, a lot of it was just kind of picking my moments when it was going to be smart to move through the assault waves. I did have to be very careful because, all it takes is getting caught with your pants down for 2 seconds in order for you to go down, or making dumb choices, kind of like I did right there. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. If you've watched my Payday with Friends video, you may have seen him. His name is Cypress, and we were talking the other day. And he's like, I played with you long enough to know that the quote-unquote stupid things you say you do are actually just calculated decisions. And I was like, I think even though I've partially said it like that before, I've never really considered it like that. Calculated decisions meaning I very carefully judge when it might be a good time to be stupid. When my teammates might be able to have my back or something like that. And I don't really do it consciously thinking oh, okay, I think it should be perfectly safe to move right now. I just kind of go by feel a lot of the time. I do still think, and I do still go, okay, I think it's smart to move right now, but not at every given moment am I thinking things like that. A lot of times, like I said, I just kind of play on feeling, and most players are like that, At every, single moment and step you take, you're not constantly thinking to yourself, is this the best decision I can possibly make in this given instance? You just kind of go with the flow. So anyway, general strategy as it stands right now is kind of was camping out in that area until I got the way cleared in front of me, till I saw that enemies weren't spawning around the side of the house. Pardon me. And just running up through here so I could go ahead and get this circuit box. Due to the quote-unquote circular nature of this map before the house gets opened up, it's very easy to kind of, not really trick enemies, but pull enemies to that back shed there. Even if the computer is in the front shed, which I'm at right now, I still go camp in the back area where the other computer is, and lure enemies there, and then once I've cleared about half the wave, or I feel like about half the wave, I'll usually go ahead and sprint over to try to at least do 1 or 2 objectives. Forgot that I had to clip the thing for a second. I got a little ahead of myself. I have a tendency to do that when I'm in a rush. Not really in a rush, but I'm not a big fan of sitting out in the open. Kind of looking for enemies as I'm sprinting through here, making sure that, you know, I can duck into cover in case my armor breaks. That is something you need to be very conscious of when you're using Rogue. I mean, when you're using other perk decks as well. Except that Rogue, I like using the word cushion. It gives you that bit of dodge cushion so that you can get into cover and potentially not get just randomly shot again. You know, maybe you'll dodge a hit as you're going into cover so you won't end up dying. As opposed to something like Kingpin, where if you're out of your injector and you're caught sprinting and you can't duck into cover fast enough and you just get 2 or 3 shots, and that's kind of just the end of it. I still love using Kingpin though, and I think that every perk deck has its different bonuses as it's going right now. A bunch of people have been asking me like, okay, well, what do you think the best perk deck is? And you know, even though I made the perk decks video, that was really long and not a very succinct type of thing. So I guess my succinct view on it is that every individual of the, I'm going to say, top 5 perk decks right now, which of course includes the new Sicario perk deck, all have their various strengths and weaknesses, and I think a case could be made that based on personal preference, each one is just as usable as any of the others, and are better in certain scenarios and are worse in, you know, other scenarios. For instance, Rogue is very good for crossing large areas with the potential of not taking any damage whatsoever. But Rogue's, you know, strength is also its biggest weakness. It's just it's random chance. That's all Rogue is. It's just random chance to not take damage. If you're lucky, you don't take damage, and if you play smart, you can, you know, I can't remember, you know, verbatim what the saying is right now, but something along the lines of, you know, luck is something that you make. You know, you can change the scenarios in order to put luck in your favor. Actually, I think the dentist has a quote like that whenever you go into pre-planning on certain heists. That luck is just a little bit of forethought and extra planning. So even though dodge does have an extra chance, due to the precautions that you take whenever you're using Rogue, you can increase your survivability even more so than just the random chance provided to you from dodge. And then talking about things like armor, armor's strength is in the fact that, and I tell people this all the time, is in its consistency. You know, with Rogue, it's inconsistent in the way that you don't know if you can take this many shots, or if you're going to have this amount of invulnerability after your armor breaks. It's all just very willy-nilly. And, you know, you have to take calculated risks and determine if it's going to be safe to move or not. Things you have to do with other perk decks as well, but almost more so with Rogue, because it's like gambling in a way. Like right there, that was a calculated risk. I could have lost the run right then if I wouldn't have dodged that last hit as I was getting behind cover. That could have been the end of the run. But it wasn't, because, you know, like I was saying, calculated risks. I was thinking it might be worth picking up this convert. If I don't get shot, I'm going to be fine. I've got about a 55% chance to get shot that dodge it, so I'm just going to go ahead and roll with it. Clearing out this front area of enemies is pretty straightforward if you have a grenade launcher or any sort of weapon that deals good damage. Any of my weapons would have been fine. I just decided to use the China Puff so I could clear them out relatively quickly. So yeah, armor's strength is in its consistency, and you know, you can tell, like, I can take approximately this many shots in a given situation. I mean, you're never going to know exactly, but you know, you can get a rough estimate. Like, I can take about this many shots in this given situation. I'll have about 2 seconds of invulnerability. I can cross from here to here and I should be fine. You know, things like that. So armor strength is in its consistency, and if you were careful in tracking that as a player, that's something you can exploit to the fullest, absolutely. Anarchist strength, or maybe I should talk about armorer's weakness too. Armorer's weakness is generally in the fact that you're going to be using like ICTV and you're just going to be slower. I mean, that doesn't sound like much, but in certain scenarios, that can actually make a big difference. You know, you can cross an area in maybe 2 or 3 seconds with Rogue, and you know, only get shot X amount of times. But then you're wearing ICTV and running across an area, and you're taking 2 times the amount of shots that you would be with Rogue simply because you're not crossing the distance nearly as fast. And that's something you have to, you know, you have to kind of accommodate for. It's not really a straight up weakness, it's just a little thing you have to keep in mind, along with Rogue, you know, with the calculated decision making. Anarchist, its strength is in its continual armor gating, in the sense that, you know, your armor is always regenerating, even when you're being suppressed. So in terms of that game mechanic, it is absolutely fantastic. It also gives you a bunch of armor, so if you're wearing ICTV, you have a bunch of armor if your armor is full. And if you're wearing a suit, your armor gates relatively fast. I think it's like every second or 2 seconds or something. Here I'm running around looking for the gas can because I realized that I hadn't picked it up yet. So I was just going through the gas can spawn areas to see if I could find one really quickly. Thankfully I had the downstairs painting area in front of the pool to gather the paintings at, which is one of my preferred spots. The other one is like in the middle of the house, and then the last one is on the roof. I'm not a big fan of the roof one, but I'm sorry I keep switching back and forth between topics so quickly, but I just get on a little tangent about whatever it is I'm talking about and then realize that, oh, I wanted to make a note of this in the video. But anyway, Anarchist's weakness, of course, is the fact that your health is diminished greatly as a consequence of having greatly increased armor. And so you're very vulnerable to snipers if you're wearing little armor. You're pretty much vulnerable to snipers at most times. And that's kind of armor's, that's kind of armor's biggest weakness. Kind of got pinned here for a second, didn't really have anywhere super secure to run to. I was getting a little frazzled, didn't want to just start laying first aid kits all over the place, but turned out okay. I was worried my convert got stuck over here for a second. I was like, really, dude, what are you doing? But he ended up moving here in a second. Kingpin's weakness, or Kingpin's strengths, obviously, are the pseudo-invulnerability you get for about 6 seconds when you activate the injector, bar dozers and weak cops, Bronco cops and shotgun cops and things of that nature will completely eviscerate you when you're using the injector due to their insane damage output on 1 down. But, you know, so long as you stay conscientious of that, you know, the injector is, for all intents and purposes, nearly invulnerable, or makes you nearly invulnerable for about 6 seconds. And that in and of itself is a strength, and, you know, I listed a weakness right there. Dozers are one of the biggest weaknesses of the Kingpin perk deck, and makes it kind of difficult to do the no-down runs with Kingpin, honestly. Not because it's not capable of it, but because you have to kill dozers before they kill you. Or, like, you have to kill dozers before they can shoot you twice, essentially. And that's only if they're by themselves. If they're paired with other enemies, the other enemy's breaking your armor, and then the dozer shooting you is usually a nightmare scenario. And also the downtime between the injector usages for Kingpin is also not really a weakness. I mean, it's what makes it balanced, of course. But, you know, you're using essentially a version of muscle whenever your injector is on its cooldown period. You have the increased health, but you don't have the other nice little bells and whistles from muscle, such as, you know, your health regeneration and, oh shoot, what's the other thing? Panic, right, panic. So basically you're using a slightly nerfed version of muscle in between injector usages. But then when you have the injector, of course, the injector is just, oh, so good. Just camping in here between objectives, trying to wait for objectives to change and so on and so forth. My convert was, or one convert anyway, was keeping people pretty well distracted. I think the other convert had pathed up to the roof for some reason and gotten stuck. That happened pretty frequently in this heist, actually, once the, yeah, see, there he is, way over there. My converts, even if I didn't go to the roof, would just path up to the roof and then just stay there for whatever reason. Sicario. Sicario, kind of hard to say in its current state because we don't know if it's going to be changed anytime soon or not. Saw that enemies were spawning over that side of the wall, so I didn't want to go ahead and rush out to the car just yet. But in its current state, Sicario's strengths lie within the semi-panic button smoke grenade that you can use, which has various uses, you know, decreasing enemy accuracy if you throw it at enemies, or using it to cover objectives if you throw it at the objective and, you know, gives you some time to move on that pretty reliably. Convert is getting whooped out here. Just decided to give him a little bit of covering fire because I didn't really have anything else to do while I was waiting for Bile. Well, I mean, I wasn't waiting for Bile, but while I was waiting for enemies to path around. So I was hoping they would get pulled around to the back, the sides, so that I could go ahead and charge out front and get the car. Sicario's weaknesses, or another one of Sicario's strength, of course, is the armor gating from the dodge mechanic. The fact that you can use it with different armors. It has a lot of littler. That's definitely a proper English term. Littler. No, but it has a lot of kind of seemingly innocuous bonuses going for it. It's like, well, okay, that's a nice little bonus to add onto the perk deck, I guess. But all of them in conjunction are what make it on par with the other 4 1-down perk deck. I'm just going to refer to them as the 1-down perk decks, like the ones that are most effective for 1-down. Its weakness lies in the fact that, like dodge, it does have some inconsistency. The smoke, from what I've experienced, and even though people say that you're basically invulnerable while you're in the smoke, I have noticed more than one instance of being in the middle of the smoke, in the middle of the duration, and going down. I'm not sure what causes that. I'm not sure if there's a hard cap on dodge, and that's like hidden in the game mechanic, so you can't actually have over 100 dodge, even if the game's values says you should. I honestly don't know. I don't know that deeply about those specific mechanics to be able to make that kind of judgment call. Regardless, you know, you're not invulnerable while you're in the smoke by any stretch of the means, and it's you know, very similar to you know, the Kingpin injector in the fact that it's not true invulnerability. It's like a pseudo invulnerability, and you still have to be careful of certain scenarios. And so that is one of its bigger weaknesses. But like I was saying, the fact that the dodge is inconsistent and the dodge numbers fluctuate a lot. You know, if you take a hit, your dodge chance goes up until you get hit again, or I'm sorry, until you dodge, and then the number goes back down to what it originally was, and it just fluctuates back and forth like that depending on if you're getting hit or getting not. And it can be very difficult to, you know, keep up with that if you're just being shot from a whole bunch of different directions. So you just got to kind of wing it. And just go with it and treat it like Rogue with a smoke bomb is basically what I do. It's a it's Rogue with slightly less dodge chance and some smoke bombs and some cool armor gating, and without weapon swap speed. So basically, instead of weapon swap speed, you get armor gating, and instead of enemies targeting you less, you get the smoke bombs. All of which in conjunction, you know, make it pretty good. I think certain aspects of Rogue are even kind of not even looked at poorly, but aren't really taken into consideration in how much they actually end up helping in the long run. Weapon swap speed increased by 80% is actually like really good in certain scenarios, and if you're needing to, you know, switch between an AR and a whatever your secondary weapon is, really quickly or in a pinch, you know, that 80% weapon swap speed actually can make a pretty sizable difference, and I've noticed it many different times. Mostly I notice it whenever I'm playing with other perk decks and I don't have that weapon swap speed, and I'm like, well, crud, you know. I couldn't switch weapons fast enough in this situation. I ended up going down because of it, because I thought I could change weapons faster, but I couldn't, and, you know, so on. Cleaning out this area in here was pretty easy. I think at this point both of my converts had gotten stuck on the roof. Yeah, there was one of them, I couldn't see the other one, but I'm fairly certain they're both up there at this point. So that left me to clean this area and essentially finish the rest of the heist without their covering fire. Here in a moment, though, whenever I start using the wench to pull up the safe, I do go outside and kind of camp with my converts so I can have that extra bit of covering fire.
Can you give me a fucking medic bag or what? You can get your first aid here.
I couldn't hit the turret's critical spot from here, but I was still able to do enough damage to kill it. Starting to get a little low on cavity ammo though, so I decided to run around and grab a few pickups because I knew I was going to have to kill Souza, and that was going to eat up a bit of ammo. Definitely didn't want to get caught without any ammo because, again, I didn't buy any assets. Well, not because I was like, oh, I want to put no assets in this video, but honestly just because I was like, yeah, I don't even need them. Like, I don't need the doctor bags because I'm doing no down runs. I shouldn't need the rope ladder whenever I'm moving the bags. I don't need the grenade. Well, I could have got the grenade case for this, but generally I haven't been getting the grenade case because I've been using Sicario and Kingpin, and the grenade case is literally just a waste of money. Which, I mean, it's not a big waste of money, clearly, but, you know, there's no point in buying it if I literally just can't even use it with those perk decks. And then the ammo bag, most of the weapons I bring tend to be ammo efficient enough that I don't need the ammo bag. So this part was just a little bit of a waiting game, waiting for the winch to be pulled up, or waiting for the safe to be pulled up by the winches. Actually, just the night prior to me making this video, I decided to actually sit down and watch the 1983 Scarface movie. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I have to have something to talk about during this part because it's just me waiting for the assault to kind of fade out and occasionally going in and repairing the winches. I'm doing what I did in my first World Bank video where I was kind of laying a little chain of first aid kits in case I was to get downed running from place to place, and the overlapping radiuses from, or radii? Is it radius or radii? We'll say radii. And the overlapping radii from the uppers skill should prevent me from going down in case dodge failed me as I was running from place to place. Starting to get low on first aid kits though, so I was keeping that in mind because I also did have to do the bag moving section. At this point I was hoping for the boat as opposed to the what was the instead of the van escape. I wanted the boat escape because the boat escape might not technically be closer. They're probably about equidistant from the safe. However, I personally wanted the boat because I felt like it was easier to get to, like the back area is easier to run through. Almost bit it right there. Thankfully, Rogue kept me covered. I was out of range of the mini-med I had in front of the safe, so I had to burn the one behind the couch. And now I was down to 2, and now I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is getting a little, because I still have to wait for the safe to come up all the way, and I have to actually move the bags, and I don't know what spawn I'm going to get, and this could be pretty bad if I'm having to move bags out in the open. And I definitely didn't want to keep waiting for assault waves to pass. However, at this point I was willing to, considering I was this deep into the heist and hadn't failed yet, so... Interesting thing I've noticed when converts get stuck is they are still pushed by enemies. Not physically pushed, as in like the enemies like collide with their collision boxes and then like force them to move. Or I guess you could say collide with their models, but like they are quote-unquote suppressed by the enemies in that they'll start strafing away. So if you notice, my converts slowly start drifting further and further away from where I was camping at, making it ever slightly more inconvenient for me to try to camp here. Again, I'm not sure what causes the pathing on the converts to go haywire and make them just sit still for no reason whatsoever, or seemingly no reason whatsoever. However, I would really like to know. I would also like to know if that is something that overkill could possibly fix, because it is sometimes a pain in the butt. It's usually never a big deal, though. Converts are nice for the suppressing fire. and for distracting enemies, but even if converts get stuck, then you can just resort to kiting.
Surrender, asshole. Shit, I
Because kiting is still, of course, a pretty effective technique for, you know, circumventing having to, how does one say, interact with enemies, I guess? And minimizing enemy interaction. Sniper almost made me burn my mini-mid there. I had hostage take raised on this build, so I didn't decide to hit the mini-med. I just was going to keep sitting behind cover. I try to only use the mini-meds in situations where I know if I don't use it, my likelihood of dying is going to be pretty high. Taking my sweet time as I'm going to try to repair the winch, because I don't want to get caught being killed.
I wasted that medic fuck. Surrender, asshole. Shield shouldn't have gotten up this morning.
Starting to get the feeling that the assault was going to fade. And I wanted to try to prevent killing enemies as best I could, but simultaneously, if I absolutely needed to, I of course wasn't going to be afraid to. I wanted the assault to fade so that I would have a easier time moving bags. Have a little bit of leeway time. Hopefully I could get them to the boat before the next assault wave started. Of course, though, having to move 6 bags that far in the span of roughly 30 seconds, just a lot of times just isn't feasible. I did have a hostage to kind of extend the time between assault waves, but thankfully the safe came up just as the assault wave ended. That was pretty convenient timing in that regard. The escape doesn't trigger until you pick up at least 6 bags, so I was just grabbing the bags of Yayo and throwing them over to the side before I saw if I had the van or if I had the... No, I guess I have to pick up 5 bags first before it displays. Maybe it's on a timer. I don't know. Usually you can pick up 5 bags before you can tell what escape it is. I'll leave it like that. Regardless. I did get the boat escape like I was hoping for, so I decided to go ahead and move the bags over onto this balcony so I could throw them. I planned on throwing them down in front of where I had that mini-med in the garage area. Or garage shed, whatever you want to call it. I wanted to have the bags there so that I was near a mini-med whenever I could pick up the bags. Of course, I wanted to do that so that I could try to stay a little bit safer considering I only had 2 mini-meds left. I was also down to 2 concussion grenades, so I had to kind of be conscious of that. I was really starting to run low on supplies. Thankfully, I wasn't running low on ammo. Thankfully, I managed to kill the sniper before he killed me. Of course, it would have been closer to move the bags if by throwing them to the left as far as I could. I didn't poke up above the ledge because the taser was on top of the building over there. Didn't want to get tased. Dodged a bunch of shots from that shield, but pretty sure that's because part of those shots were in the grace window for when, like when you dodge in like a third of a second or something, any other hits you'll also dodge or something like that. So. And the shield's SMG, I'm pretty sure, fired fast enough such that I got covered by a bit of that. Decided to run back out here for a bit, hoping the enemies would follow me up here so that I could run down. And then I just decided, whatever. I'll just loop around and go into the back anyway. Down to 1 first aid kit at this point, so definitely having to be careful of that.
Fuck yeah. Time to get out of here. Drop your weapon.
So now I'm just gonna try to carefully pick my moments and move the bags when I feel it's safe, being careful not to throw it into the water. Thankfully that enemy didn't do too much health damage to me, otherwise I was probably going to have to use my last first aid kit, and I wanted to try to save that as best I could. I noticed the enemies were finally catching up to where I was, so I decided to move the bags inside the garage shed.
Watch out for the taser! They got a fucking taser! Taser! A fucking dozer! Bulldozer! Kill the bulldozer! Fucking taser got a fucking power out!
Of course, my converts were still stuck up on the roof, so I was alone for the last little bit of this heist.
No more
It's quite sad. My converts deserve a break, though. They work hard.
Bulldozer's dead!
Shouldn't make them do all the work anyway. I guess from time to time I should just take matters in my own hands and just start killing all the enemies myself.
Fucking medical pendejo! Hands up! Get down on your knees! Cops on now!
I only saw one health bar from my convert, so I saw if I could maybe take one, but couldn't. And I didn't really care about having the hostage, so just went ahead and exploded him.
Fucking taser!
I just wanted to test and see if I could take another hostage. Or, I'm sorry, take another convert.
Taser got a fucking power out! Fire in the hole!
Went up there to grab some ammo. Thankfully, it didn't end in disaster. Which, of course, I always tried to stay within the radius of the first aid kit. Within the upper skill. So. Notice the assault wave was starting to kind of thin out again.
Send a medic to the hospital!
So I decided that now was high time to start moving bags. The enemies seem to cluster over by this area quite a bit. I was worried I was going to have enemies come from behind me. I was waiting for my armor to regen, but I was being suppressed. So I was going to lay down the first aid kit, but then I was like, whatever, I'll just hang on to it. And as I'm running back up here, I noticed that pretty much all the enemies that are left coming to attack me are a bunch of shields. And usually if I'm just surrounded by a bunch of shields, my only thought is, hey, that means that I definitely am in Fade. So I tried to kill only one or two shields and leave the rest alive, because the shields SMGs don't do a lot of damage. And due to their rate of fire, I had talked about that dodge grace period earlier, like the third of a second. And so sometimes their rate of fire kind of factors into that a bit. So the shields are generally pretty low in threat to me. I tried to throw my concussion grenade over the thing, but I think it just went into the ocean.
Shit, a shield!
I decided to not take any risks since I barely had any
Shield is dead!
bags left to move, and kill those last two shields, which triggered the end of the assault wave. So now all I had to do is move these last two bags, and that was it. But of course, I tried to prevent myself from thinking, okay, this is it, I've got it now, because I was verbally telling myself at this moment, never assume in this game, especially when you're running something as finicky as Rogue can be, do not tell yourself that it's over. It will take one sniper spawn with your armor broken and you are dead. Like right here, if a sniper would have spawned and shot me and I wouldn't have dodged it, I could have died right there. Thankfully though, that didn't happen. I was able to move the bags with my one remaining first aid kit, and managed to get into the escape perfectly safe. Alright, that was my Scarface mansion run. Take a quick look at my stats. 1 down, no assets, no downs, no AI, you know, all that good stuff. But anyway, as usual, thank you guys so much for watching.